Welcome. You're now listening to episode 121 from The Shed End with myself, Theo, and the other Theo. How you doing?
Yeah, usually I always say I'm good on this podcast, but today I feel slightly down. Lost quite badly in my five-a-side game last night in the London rain. And for those who live in London, they'll know it was pissing down on Tuesday night. And I also watched a Greece heartbreak on penalties.
Yeah, it was horrible.
To qualify for yet another international tournament, losing to Georgia. But yeah, bit of a shitty Tuesday. But other than that, I'm good. Looking forward to the Premier League football returning this weekend. And also looking forward to having a 4-day weekend. Good Friday, bank holiday, Easter Monday as well. I think it's needed. It's that part of the year, end of Q1, where work's ramping up. So yeah, definitely in need of a 4-day weekend. But other than that, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I echo pretty much everything you just said, especially the football. I think we got battered like 8-2 on Monday night in our 8-a-side game. And sort of felt like I was playing defence on my own, so it was a bit difficult. But no, I'm good. Like you, watched a couple of the international games. Like you watched Greece last night against Georgia. Very, very tough to take if you're a supporter of Greece, because it was definitely their game from what I got to see. Very unfortunate there as well. But yeah, watch a couple of international games. Looking forward to the Premier League coming back. And like you just said, quarter one, if you're a worker, you'll know that quarter one is very busy. The business ends, as I'd like to say, of the year, financial year. So yeah, just chaotic in work. But we're here to record the podcast, which is good. It's always good to switch off from other things going on in life. If you're new to the podcast, please make sure you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel on there as well. And also, if you're on YouTube, again, go to the audio version of the podcast. Make sure you hit the notification bell on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any digital streaming platform as well. But let's cover off some of the international games, because there was quite a few, as there always is. I like to call them the pointless internationals at this point, unless obviously it's a qualifier for Euro 2024. But a lot of pointless friendlies and games where potentially could have picked up an injury, and we were quite lucky. We spoke just before we came on that I think Malagusto, Cole Palmer probably were the only ones. Carney Chukwuemeka came back to Cobham as well, but some of the other clubs, John Stones I think picked up an injury for Man City yesterday as well. Robertson I think came off injured for Scotland, for Liverpool, so we kind of came away unscathed in that aspect. But some of the games that you watch, Theo, what do you think of them? Obviously I know Greece, close to your heart, was tough to take. It was a tough way to go out. I think Wales went out on penalties as well to Poland. But what some of the games that you watch, what were your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I did obviously watch the Greece one. Was very heartbroken, and like you said, I feel like Greece were the better team over the 120 minutes. And when it gets the spot kicks, anything can happen. But in terms of the other football, I watched the England-Brazil game. Pretty dull affair, if I'm honest. I was quite pleased to see Gallagher and Chilwell start. I say pleased because it's always nice seeing some Chelsea boys in action, but also pleased the fact they didn't pick up any injuries, particularly Chilwell, who we know just came back from that kind of strange injury he had that some people said he was rumoured to be facing 3 or 4 months on the sidelines. But then he started again against Belgium last night, played the 90 minutes, and yeah, no injuries there for him, luckily. But to be really honest, I thought Gallagher and Chilwell were pretty ineffective against Brazil, but that was pretty much the whole England squad. I thought it was a very lacklustre performance from the majority of the players. I thought Watkins had a bit of a shocker, missing that kind of glorious chance he had. But yeah, and then Palmer missed that game for injury, was on the bench for the Belgian game yesterday and didn't even come on. Maybe a blessing for us, because he's the last player you want to have get injured. Other football I watched, I saw the 7-second goal from Florian Wirtz against was it France? Yeah, France. Scored after 7 seconds. I think they passed to Kroos. Kroos just lobs it forward, and it was a brilliant finish from Wirtz. He thinks he breaks the record, only for I think an Austrian player to score after 6 seconds on the same night. But yeah, that was pretty impressive. Other Chelsea action, obviously you saw the Mudryk goal. Secured his nation a spot in Euro 2024 in dramatic fashion, scoring in the 84th minute against Iceland. Yeah. Always good to see Ukraine qualify for an international tournament, given everything that's happened to them, not even being able to play in their home country. I think the game was being played in Poland, not in Ukraine. And it would mean a lot to the players, the nation, to have them play in that tournament. Good goal as well, a well-taken strike, and he kind of didn't really hit it with power, but just placed it well. And that will do him a world of good for his confidence as well as he returns from the international break. And I think he's a player that should be in contention of starting against Burnley on Saturday.
Yeah.
Other football I watched, I saw that Cassidy scored for the Italy under-21s. I wouldn't be able to tell you who it was against because I haven't really followed it properly. Madueke is having a really good. He's always does well when he gets called upon for the England under-21s.
Yeah,
2 assists and 2 goals last night. Good goals as well. I saw, but it's a very good squad. The England under-21s. You've got players like Harvey Elliott in the mix. I think Curtis Jones is often, when he's not injured, he's selected as well. So players that, in my opinion, are good enough to start playing for the first team. I think Gibbs White, another one. Yeah. They still play quite regularly for the England youth team. But yeah, I think it was quite a good international break in terms of Chelsea players because no real injuries for us. There were this slight scares of Carney Chukwuemeka pulling out and returning to England training, but it was just a precaution and a knock, and it's believed that he's back fit now. And then Malagusto as well, who pulled out of the France 21s, not because of an injury, but because of quite a bad fever and cold. So maybe it was, again, just a question of him being back home and being able to rest and recover in time for Premier League weekend. So you do hope both those players feature in the squad on Saturday. But yeah, quite a dull international break. Nothing really much in terms of like matches that made me go, wow. But yeah, from a Chelsea perspective, good to see that none of our boys got properly injured. And those 2 scares we had are just small precautions.
Yeah, it's a good assessment. It's a good way to round up the international break, really. I think it's, I mean, it's always difficult, isn't it? Because I think, this part of the season is when players potentially probably don't even want to go and represent their countries as much as they do. It's a thin line between, do you represent your country or do you try and keep yourself fit for the remainder of the season? So I think it probably comes at a difficult time for some of the players. But you're right, I think especially someone like Cole Palmer, I think if we, the form that he's in, to lose him would have been, disastrous. It would have been a really bad time to lose him in the club. Noni Madueke, Mudryk, I want to see a bit more of them, and I want to, we've seen them go away at internationals, and I remember watching Noni Madueke. I think it must have been one of the tournaments, the international tournaments for under-21s, and he was really good. But he just came back and he didn't really get himself into that senior squad at Chelsea. So I want to see him do more of that. And we've spoke about Mudryk on here about the inconsistencies where he scores. He's not in the team the next game. So, he's done it again. He scored for international, for Ukraine. I think, did he not miss the penalty for the last, was it the World Cup? Did he miss a penalty for that? And I feel
it rings a bell. I feel like, it's ringing a bell seeing him.
I feel like he missed Ukraine, the deciding penalty, I think, in a qualifier for Ukraine. But he's obviously the hero, not the villain this time round, scoring a goal to put them through. And like you said, it'd be good to see them there. I think it was a bit harsh, as I said, on Greece. I watched that game and I said to you, didn't I, about the laser pens and just some of the officiating. The referee in that game was a bit mental as well. But hard on Greece, I thought. In terms of England, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think this has to be Gareth Southgate's last tournament as England manager. He's been spoken about for Manchester United and even potentially Liverpool. I was reading this morning, might come in for him. But I just look at the quality that England have in that squad. And like you said, even having that Cole Palmer on the bench, I know if he's not fully fit, but you've selected him, give him a run out, just give him 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Our motto, if he's on the bench, he should be able to play. So
yeah. Is Tomori injured?
I think he's just come back. Did he not just come back from a big injury?
Maybe.
He came back from a big injury. If
he's not injured and he's not getting selected yet, players like Dunk, who had an absolute shocker last night, gets selected, then it says a lot about Southgate's decisions.
Yeah.
But another player that I think needs to be on the plane to Germany tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if even Jared Banfrey, I think, was on the bench yesterday, and Dunk is there. So with Southgate, I think we're going to have to resign to the fact that he's playing these strange squads. I think, did Harry Maguire not start against Brazil as well? So for me, I think we've all moaned about Gareth Southgate and his defensive lineups and how he sets the team up. But when you've got the likes of Jude Bellingham, Cole Palmer, Conor Gallagher, Kobe Mainoo, who's just come into the squad as well, Foden, and other players, even Maddison. You know, Ivan Toney looked really good yesterday when he scored his penalty. But you know, you've got a good attack. You know, you've got an attacking team going forward. You've got to be able to do something with it. And you know, whoever takes over from Southgate, they're walking into a national squad that's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential. So hopefully, whoever takes over, whoever that is, you know, they can go on and do something with the squad. But you know, it'd be a shame not to see England as a tournament as a tournament winner at some point in our lifetime, because there's been opportunities even before then. You know, I'm talking even going back to 96. You know, 96 Euro 96 was perfect as well. 98. You think if Beckham never got sent off, you know, the goal, Ronaldinho's goal in I think that was 2002, was it? The Brazil one. The Brazil goal. So there's been opportunities, and even before then, you know, the final recently, the semi-finals recently as well. So, you know, England managers have had it where they've been able to, you know, they've got almost one hand on the trophy and just not been able to take us over the line. So whoever comes in has got quality there to deal with.
Yeah, and also I'm glad that the player who scored for Belgium yesterday wasn't Lukaku, but Tillman.
It was a good assist.
It was a good assist from him, but at least he's not scoring back in England. I'm pleased to see that.
Did you see what the reporters asked him after the game, if he's basically doing what he's doing now, trying to impress his way back into Chelsea? And he kind of laughed it off, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'll be honest, I would not be surprised to see Lukaku. I'm not advocating it. I'm not saying that I want this, but I would not be surprised to see Lukaku back at Stamford Bridge next season.
Maybe alongside Hakim Ziyech and Kepa Arrizabalaga as well.
Yeah, we can put them in the reserves, I think. But yeah, I mean, let's move on. We've got a bit to cover in this one, but let's talk about the Premier League Hall of Fame. Obviously, Ashley Cole was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think Monday. Feels like it was only Monday this week that he got inducted into there. Surprised he was probably not in there a bit earlier, if I'm honest, because he's arguably the best left back the Premier League has probably ever seen. Chelsea legend, let's have it right. He's not an Arsenal legend, he's a Chelsea legend. What's your thoughts on him being inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it was only going to be a matter of time. I felt like when they initially introduced this Premier League Hall of Fame, they prioritised the high-scoring strikers, the Shearers, the Drogbas, the quality midfielders, the Lampards and the Roy Keanes, centre-backs obviously as well, and then also probably the Schmeichels and the Petr Cechs, and they kind of neglected the full-backs. But if you're going to pick a full-back, it's got to be Ashley Cole. For me, the Premier League's best ever left back. There hasn't been a better left back since he's retired, since he left the Premier League to join AS Roma. From a Chelsea perspective, he was just so strong defensively, his spatial awareness. I think the day he got inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame, they posted that clip of his performance against United, I think in 2007 or 2006, where he kind of man-marked Cristiano Ronaldo. And you could just see how frustrated Cristiano Ronaldo was getting every time Ashley Cole would get the ball off him, put in a tackle, put in a challenge. And then another clip resurfaced on another account, and they asked Ronaldo who was the toughest defender he ever faced. And he answered Ashley Cole, which says a lot about how good of a defender he was. So yeah, fantastic footballer. And kind of that era as well, when he played, there wasn't social media knocking about. So some of his highlight reels and compilations of his performances probably weren't as noticeable. But I think it's about time they start to resurface, and our generation now realise how good of a left back he was. So yeah, fantastic player and a really well-deserved achievement for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember when we signed him, and I was gutted. I think I've said on here before, I was gutted because I think we not move on William Gallas, who was part of the deal, wasn't he, to go over. Yeah. I remember it was a deadline, the deadline was shutting, and we was spoken about Ashley Cole coming to the club the whole day, transfer deadline day. And I remember just the final hours we got it over the line, and I remember going through, and at the time I thought William Gallas was like, head and shoulders above a lot of Premier League defenders at the time. And I just thought, I didn't know if I didn't like Ashley Cole because he's coming from Arsenal. I think that was probably what it was. He was an Arsenal player, despised Arsenal, obviously. But when he came, it didn't take long for him to get into that squad and just make that role his, and go on to be one of the best. I think he got player of the year twice for us, did he not?
Might have, yeah.
2009, I think. Maybe.
But for me, it's just that there's one moment that just sums him up, and I think it's not spoken enough amongst Chelsea fans, but it's when he cleared that ball off the line against Napoli in Italy. The first leg, we were losing 3-1, and he clears the ball off the line. And in my opinion, if he doesn't clear that ball off the line, we don't kind of mount that comeback in the second leg, and we don't go on to win the Champions League. So we speak a lot about the Petr Cech save in the final, the Drogba winner, the Drogba equaliser, the Ivanovic winner in extra time. But that Ashley Cole goal line clearance for me is just as important as a goal.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, he was, just reading now, he's Player of the Year 2009, 2011, and was also awarded Goal of the Season award for the 2009-2010 season as well, and was also voted into the PFA Premier League Team of the Year on 4 separate occasions as well. So it tells you just the magnitude of quality that he possessed. 230 appearances for Chelsea in the Premier League, achieving the club's first domestic double as well. So, I mean, I this is going to sound so crazy, but I really don't think we've replaced him.
I was going to say.
I actually don't think we've replaced someone like you. I mean, can you? That's probably the better question. Can you replace an Ashley Cole?
Because I was thinking about this. When he left, it was during that 2013-14 season where Mourinho was experimenting with Azpilicueta as left back.
Yeah.
And that only kind of lasted a season. Then the following year, we brought in Felipe Luis from Atletico Madrid.
Oh, I forgot about him.
He only played like a handful of games, and Mourinho was still kind of deciding to play Azpi left back and Ivanovic right back. And then the following year, we didn't really. I'm trying to think. We got Baba Rahman in.
Yeah, we did.
It didn't work out, and then it was only afterwards that we got Marcus Alonso, then Chilwell, and that lot. Cucurella eventually afterwards. So yeah, if you kind of take all those players into account, we haven't properly replaced them, have we?
No.
One thing I did find quite funny is Arsenal put a kind of a congratulations post out with Ashley Cole, and I had a look at the comments, and let's just say that the Arsenal fans haven't really forgiven him still to this day.
And why should they? He went on to bigger and better things. I think that's clearly, I think you can, anyone can see that he clearly went on to do more. Obviously going on to win the Champions League, something that hasn't been done by another club in London. For me, kind of says it all. I don't think until Arsenal matched that, and even then, he wasn't even part. If Arsenal go on to win the Champions League now, Ashley Cole has nothing to do with that. So I think he went on to do better things. And you looking at back on it now. Look at William Gallas, look at Ashley Cole. Clearly, it was a good move for both clubs at the time. More so for us, we got a gem in Ashley Cole, really. So yeah, definitely deserves his place in the Premier League Hall of Fame for me. But we could probably do with him now, to be honest. If you could dust his boots off, we could probably do with him now.
Definitely, I think he's still he's a coach with the England national team.
Yeah, he's doing well in coaching. I mean, I think he was obviously part of the Everton lineup as well.
Yeah,
I think he was
Lampard's right hand man, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he was also part of the Birmingham City setup as well. Recently,
I think with Rooney. Too.
Yeah. So he's definitely learning. And I suppose I'll ask you the question: could you ever see him going in, stepping over the line into the actual management side of things? Do you reckon he would do that?
He's doing everything currently to kind of indicate that he could. He's been the assistant manager, I think, like you mentioned, at Birmingham, at Everton. I think he had a role with the England youth setup as well. I still can't really see him at a big club in terms of maybe a Chelsea or a club of that caliber. But I think definitely, I think he had a stint as well at Derby.
He did. Yeah,
maybe if he works his way up from a Derby county like Lampard did, perhaps I think that'd be definitely a good move in his career if he wants to go into management.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that 100%. Let's talk about the next round of nominations. The 3 Chelsea players that have been nominated. They are John Terry, Eden Hazard, and Cesc Fabregas. I've put my vote in. I know you have as well. It was hard. I'll be honest. It was a tough one because all 3, in my opinion, deserve to be, inducted in. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But who have you gone for? There's this elephant in the room. Who have you gone for your next 2 votes to be inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame?
It was bloody hard.
It was very hard. It was hard.
toughest decision I'm going to have to make this week, without a doubt. But yeah, after a lot of pondering, I made my choice. I think the logic, the kind of no-brainer was voting for John Terry.
Yeah.
For me, one of the best players to ever play for Chelsea Football Club, one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League. I think the highest scoring defender in Premier League history as well, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, he was a no-brainer, Mr. Chelsea captain, leader, legend. And the fact he's not even in that Hall of Fame already is a bit surprising. So he got my first vote. And then I was left with Eden Hazard and Cesc Fabregas. And for those listening, you can only vote for 2 players at a time.
Yeah.
So I voted with Cesc Fabregas. I kind of considered the longevity of it. He was at Arsenal, then he went to Chelsea. He helped us win 2 Premier Leagues. And he was a player, even when he was at Arsenal, I hate to say it, but I absolutely loved him. I adored him. And he's one of those players that I was annoyed that I liked him so much. And in the back of my head, I kept saying, I'd love to see him in a Chelsea shirt one day. Then he went to Barcelona and he had the pushing and shoving with Frank Lampard at that Nou Camp game as well. And I was thinking to myself, like, shit, if he does come to Chelsea, it's going to be quite dramatic. But then fast forward 2 years later and he's in a Chelsea shirt and everybody thought that picture of him, with holding the kit right before the World Cup in Brazil was photoshopped, but it wasn't. And just a player that I absolutely adored to watch, a player whose football IQ is on another level, in my opinion. You listen to there's a new podcast that's out, Planet Football, and he's one of the co-hosts on it. He's absolutely, the way he talks about the game, the way he's still involved in the game with Como right now, and the way he's able to kind of remember things that happened throughout his career at Arsenal, Chelsea, Barcelona, Monaco. It's fantastic, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him, and he's also an absolute gentleman off the pitch. So maybe it's a bit biased, the fact I'm voting for Fabregas, because I have this personal connection to him and a player that I'd always put in my top 3 or 5 players. But it's so harsh on Eden Hazard. We could have a whole podcast talking about either one of these players. And in the back of my head, I also said, there'll be another opportunity to vote for Hazard. So that's why I kind of went for Fabregas and John Terry.
Yeah, I went for the same two.
Okay.
Simply because of the fact that I think for me, Fabregas was just, everything you just said is fact, but I just think Fabregas was just, he should be in there, man. He should be. There's no way that you can have a Hall of Fame and still have John Terry and Cesc Fabregas on a list of, nominees when there's other players in there already that, yes, warrant being in there, but also we've got to. It's hard because I feel all 3. Like you just said, Eden Hazard could easily be in there as well, and he will be in there. I mean, let's be honest, he will be in there eventually. I just think if we're going to do it based on who deserves it now, who deserves my 2 votes now, it has to be John Terry, as you just said. Still I think the top scoring defender in the Premier League as well. You think back to how, again, I've just spoke about Ashley Cole, and we haven't really replaced him. We could say the same about John Terry. We haven't really, you can't replace quality of that level, Ashley Cole or John Terry. And I also think that about Cesc Fabregas as well. I don't think you can replace the quality that he gives you. I just don't think you can. I think he, like you just said, his football brain is of the old school mentality, I think, where he reads the game so well. He knows where he's putting the pass before he's even got the ball. He can see things before it's even happening on the pitch. And those kind of players are special, and they don't come round often either. So that one was easy. I think the harder one for me was, do I put John Terry in there above Hazard? That was the harder one for me. But the reason I put John Terry in there is because you got to think about some of the strikers he was coming up against as well. At that time, it was just, football's changed now. But at the time, he was coming up against some really top quality strikers amongst Europe, not just in the Premier League, but amongst Europe as well. And, to go on to win the Champions League and all the rest of it, and the league, you have to put John Terry in there. I think for me, he has to be in there as well. So It was tough, but
yeah, a stat I love about John Terry is he played every single minute of the 2014-15 campaign when we won the Premier League under Mourinho for the second time.
Yeah.
And I think he must have been 34 or 35 at the time.
And he was still playing. I mean, it's like, he's still playing at that age, but it tells you something.
And at that age and at that level as well. Every single minute of every single Premier League game. You're not talking about a championship game or talking about a league abroad. We're talking about the Premier League. So yeah, fantastic player, but I'm kind of surprised we both went for the same choices. I was almost sure that you'd put Hazard in there. It's good that we're also in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, Hazard's definitely going to be in there, isn't he, at some point? But I think if we're talking about, like you said as well, you've got to factor in, take a bit of unbiased away from Cesc Fabregas. Think about his time at Arsenal as well. You know, you got to factor that into it. So, you know, when you double up both of those things, it kind of outweighs Hazard for me personally. But I'm sure there'll be people that listen to this and say, "Oh, how can you put Hazard?" Let us know your thoughts as to why Hazard should be in there before John Terry or Cesc Fabregas, and I'm sure we could be swayed. You never know. We could be swayed.
Maybe we'll change our minds after watching Hazard at Soccer Aid.
Yes, yeah. I did like the promo for that. I thought it was quite good for that. And obviously he's coming back to Stamford Bridge. For those that don't know, Eden Hazard, I think, has been selected as one of the players to play there. So he'll be back at Stamford Bridge. I can't remember the date of it, but I'm sure.
Saturday, 6th of June.
There we go.
Or Sunday, 6th of June.
There we go. But yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good to see him back at Stamford Bridge. Just before we move on to the next topic, I don't know if you've been able to see that Romeo Lavia will be out for the remainder of the season. I think Chelsea literally just put out a statement to say that he won't be playing again this season. I'm going to be honest, that looks like we should have just threw the money down the toilet, because how many games has he played so far this season? Two or three games?
He's played 15 minutes of one game. That's it.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see what he brings to the table, but let's hopefully see that next season. But
just go back to our previous episode and see why we put him in the flop category.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah. We did put him in the flop, and I think that's why we said we put him in the flop, because we didn't even need him. We didn't even need him really, but he's out for the remainder of the season. Chelsea are hopeful that he'll be back. According to this statement here, that he'll be back as soon as possible in the start of the new season. But yeah, he picked up a thigh injury against Crystal Palace back in December, and he hasn't recovered from that, and other things have clearly gone on. But very strange, really strange when you think about the age of the player, the lack of football he's played, and how many injuries he's picking up somehow. Seems a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say. Player, like you said, we didn't really need at the time. And like I said in previous recording, a player that could arguably see the end of Conor Gallagher's time at Chelsea, given the money we spent for him in the same position. And a player that we probably don't know how often we'll get to see. One of those guys who may spend more time in the physio room than the actual training than the actual football pitch. So a really frustrating signing. And every time someone mentions Lavia's name, I forget we've signed him. Because like you said, it's not 3 or 4 games we saw him in. It's literally a cameo appearance against Crystal Palace on Boxing Day. So
I shouldn't laugh, but if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So I don't know what else to do. Exactly. But let's move on. Let's talk about some of the underrated players that we've selected for Chelsea over our times of watching Chelsea. I think we said our top 3, didn't we? We've gone through our top 3. Maybe honourable shout-outs as well. Maybe honourable shout-outs. Yeah. How do you want to do? Should we do one each, or should we just do our top 3?
One each.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's do one each.
Yep.
So I thought, obviously, because it's the international break and all our football to preview, review, thought it would be a nice little throwback moment to talk about 3 players each that we kind of found their time at Chelsea or in the Premier League was kind of very underrated and doesn't get the plaudits or the credit it deserves. So I kind of took a bit of a different route, because I know there's some top Chelsea players that are kind of considered underrated by the football world, the likes of John Obi Mikel, Giroud, Ramirez. But I kind of went for the more forgotten men who played for Chelsea that I think were really underrated. And my first one is a Brazilian defender, Alex, who I thought was very, very solid. He did have his quite unfortunate to get injuries. And as I showed on his Wikipedia page right before this, we signed him in 2004. But he only made his first appearance for Chelsea in 2007 because he struggled to get his work permit. So we loaned him to PSV Eindhoven.
Oh, I do remember this. Yeah. I do remember this.
There was a lot of hard work done behind the scenes to get that work permit for him.
Yeah.
And then eventually in 2007, he came back to Chelsea once we got the green light. And he was solid. He was really, really solid. I mean, the main thing that stands out of Alex was obviously his stature, he was physically a big guy. And let's talk about those free kicks that he could score for us. This free kick, I think there's 4 of them that really stand out. One against Middlesbrough, one against Rosenborg in the Champions League, and then there's 2 against Arsenal and Liverpool. That were just absolute thunderbolts. And it's not a question of he stands to the side of the ball. He stands right behind the ball and just charges at it. And it somehow managed to find this bend and, go past. I think it was Pepe Reina or Fabianski in goal for Arsenal. The absolute thunderbolts of free kicks. So a player I really, really liked, and I thought quite harsh when Villas-Boas came in and kind of sent him to train with the reserves with Anelka, and transfer listed both of them. But I felt a player that could have maybe had a couple more seasons at the top level at Chelsea.
Yeah. I've gone for, my first one I've gone for is Jose Bosingwa, who I think is, I liked him because I think he was one of those kind of underrated players that we just didn't really appreciate what he did. And he never really cemented a regular spot, did he, in the starting 11. But when he came in, I think we got him from Porto. We would have got him from Porto, I think, wouldn't we? But when he came on, it's almost like he almost had like a Mikel role, but in defence a little bit. I think thinking back, did he not come on in the 2-2, the new camp, Barcelona? He came on for someone and he just kind of just done his job. I remember watching thinking he's just done his job. He's just got, I think it was like 20 minutes left in the game. I'm trying to think.
He's playing centre-back in that game. I think we had Ramirez.
It was Cahill. It was Cahill, I think, that went off.
Yeah.
It was Cahill, I think, that went off. And he came on and he just done his job. And we seen the game out. And he done that a lot. He done that a lot for us. And I don't know what his goal scoring record is like. I don't know if he scored many goals for us, but I'm pretty sure he probably would have played probably just under 100 games then, or maybe just over. He played about 100 games for us. I'm going to round it off to maybe 100, but he played enough games for us to be able for me to warrant being an underrated player. And to be honest, I think he was just one of those like old school traditional right backs who's done just what it says on the tin, doesn't do anything special, but he done what he needed to do, in my opinion. So I think Bosingwa for me is my first underrated player.
Good player, yeah. I'm not sure you saw there was the Real Madrid Porto legends at the Bernabeu last week.
I didn't see it.
He was playing in the Porto team.
I bet he was still good as well.
Yeah, there was some controversy with him when he went to QPR when he was released by Chelsea. I think he refused to train or something like that.
You would do that at QPR, wouldn't
you? My second one, actually continuing with the kind of Portuguese theme, I really wanted to give a kind of a shout out to Carvalho and Paulo Ferreira.
Have you gone for Deco?
No, I haven't. I've gone for another Portuguese midfielder. I've gone for Raul Meireles.
Yes. Very good shout.
So a player we signed from, another one that Villas-Boas bought in from Liverpool. He only did one season at Liverpool, also signed from Porto from Liverpool. And then Villas-Boas did a lot for him. I think we got him on deadline day. We signed him from Liverpool, and a lot of transfers happened between Chelsea and Liverpool.
Yeah.
Villas-Boas bought him in. A player that I thought would just do the dirty work. Wasn't necessarily someone, who would wow us, but I think he'd do a lot off the ball that kind of deserved a lot of credit. And then Villas-Boas gets sacked in, I think, around March time. Di Matteo comes in, and I think he had a bit more of a sporadic role when Di Matteo came in. But I do remember him having a brilliant game at the new camp as well, similarly to Bosingwa, and a player that couldn't contribute in the final because he was suspended. And let's remember that goal he scored against Benfica in the, I think it was quarterfinals, that absolute thunderbolt when he just runs down the length of the pitch and smashes it in. I think he scored another one in the FA Cup against Birmingham. And the second, I think it was, we drew the first game and then we had what do you call them? A replay fixture at St Andrews Park to play against Birmingham, and he scored an absolute screamer in that game. So a player I felt like underrated in the way that he contributed a lot to our 2011 and 2012 Champions League and FA Cup success, but maybe doesn't get enough credit as the Drogbas, the Lampards. And then very unfortunate as well that we sold him the following year. We only stayed in one season with us. We sold him to Fenerbahce in the Turkish league. So similarly to Alex, a player that I felt like could have stayed a bit longer at Chelsea, and his time at Chelsea was very underrated.
I agree with that. Sometimes because we've signed so many players over like the last 20 odd years, sometimes I forget we had Varane at the club, you know, and all these other players. But not to say that he's underrated. I don't think he was at all, or overrated actually. But yeah, I forgot about Morelos. He was just one of those players that went under the radar a little bit, didn't he? And Yossi Benayoun as well, another one who just kind of just went under the radar a little bit, but can't really say much about him, to be fair, can we? Let's move on to my second one, Joe Cole.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think he was underrated because I think he just never got. I mean, I still love him. I'll go back and watch clips of Joe Cole, and probably because I remember growing up and just he was just different at the time. People call it like street footballers now, where like the ball just glues to their feet and they can just do so many little things and trickery. And I know a couple of players that trained and grew up alongside him, and they've trained with him at Chelsea and everything, and they said he was probably one of the best players ever at Chelsea, like ever. Like even now, you'd probably put Joe Cole in your top 3 if you probably got to see half the things he did in training. He didn't really contribute in terms of goals, though. I don't think he wasn't really like a prolific goal scorer for us. He chipped in every now and again, but he wasn't like a 10 goal a season player or nothing like that. But just the stuff he did, bit like Fabregas when I was saying about it, he got just a football brain and just knows how to do things on the pitch quickly and just trickery and maneuver and know what he needs to be and work the pockets of space. That was his job. That was exactly his job. And I think he was just one of those players that I just idolized at Chelsea at the time as well. But he was always plagued with injuries as well. And I think that was something that let him down a lot, was that he was constantly injured, even beyond Chelsea. I think, just looking now, actually, I was trying to find it before. So yeah, he won the Premier League, didn't he, with us, 3 separate occasions.
3 times, yeah. I was going to say 3 separate occasions. 2
FA Cups, a League Cup, obviously the Charity Shield, and he was a runner-up again. I think that would have been the United season, wasn't it, with the 2007 Champions League final. But he was just one of those players that just, when we talk about Chelsea sort of legends, or we talk about Chelsea, top 10 players, I don't really hear many people mention him, but he should be, because for me, he's just arguably one of the best players that's played for the club.
Definitely. I think he was on the John Obi Mikel podcast recently, and there's some really interesting stories he had to tell about how hard he worked in pre-season to impress Mourinho.
Yeah. And
how Mourinho, I forgot which player it was, that Mourinho wanted to bring a specific player to Chelsea. I think he did bring a player, it might have been Deco or someone like that. And Joe Cole just worked really hard behind the scenes in pre-season to impress Mourinho and show that, this is what I'm worth, this is what I've got. You need to start me in the upcoming Premier League game. So yeah, definitely a shout out for Premier League underrated player, because I do agree we don't talk about him enough when we talk about those top level Chelsea players or Premier League players. My third choice, I had to throw a goalkeeper's name at. I think when we talk about Chelsea goalkeepers, we always think about Courtois, Petr Cech, those players. But there was an era pre-Abramovich, I want to say, where we signed Carlo Cudicini, who I think was a really underrated goalkeeper. We signed him for just £300,000 in 1999. He only went on to make 3 appearances in his first season, so he had to wait for his time. But then come 2002, he was awarded the Player of the Year. And he was a fantastic season, and very, very unlucky to lose his place to Petr Cech. I think there was no reason at the time for him to be dropped, but I think Petr Cech, we saw kind of a bit similarly how we brought in Courtois to replace Petr Cech further down the line. Maybe that's how it works as well with Cudicini and Petr Cech in 2004, 2003 even. But then, he still stayed around at the club for quite a while until 2008. Obviously, when all those injuries happened to Hilario and Petr Cech, he was still knocking about and contributed to a lot of Premier League success, FA Cup success. And I was actually reading, he saved some penalties. He was a really good penalty shot stopper and saved some big penalties from Thierry Henry and Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. So he's got that ability as well. I think when we kind of think underrated, or we kind of think about top Chelsea goalkeepers, like I said, we always think about Cech and Courtois, but very rarely do we mention Carlo Cudicini. And kind of he set those foundations for us to be successful in the Abramovich era in the goalkeeping department. So fantastic goalkeeper, and I'll say that he's very underrated. And still, I think, an ambassador for the club currently. Yeah,
it's a good shout actually, because I think goalkeepers all goalkeepers are probably underrated to an extent because they don't really get the. I mean, they're getting it now because it's it's a bit more. But back in the day, no one really gave the goalkeepers loads of credit unless he was like a David Seaman or Peter Schmeichel. But we forget even like Ed De Hoey as well when we had him in the team going back a couple of even before then as well. He never really got the credit. I don't think they deserve that they did deserve that they didn't get it, and it was just it's a really good shout, really good shout. My last one is a bit controversial, but I'm going to try and give some rationale as to why I think he should be, or he is an underrated play for Chelsea, and I've gone for Daniel Sturridge. Yeah, now there's loads of honourable shout-outs. I mean, I could easily have gone for Olivier Giroud, Juan Mata, they were on my list as well. Ramirez, I think you mentioned him, he was on my list. John Obi Mikel would have been on that list, but I feel with Sturridge, I feel like he's kind of the one that got away a little bit. And I feel when he did, I think he would have won the Premier League with us and possibly the Champions League, I think, 2011. I think he did.
Yeah. And FA Cup 2012 as well.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that. And the reason I put him in as underrated is because I think there was a lot of potential there, and I think there was only one season. I mean, he wasn't scoring bags of goals for us, and that was his job to score the goal. So this is where I'm trying to put some rationale behind it. But I think there was one season where I think he did hit double figures, probably his last season or the second to last season for us, and he was just a really talented player, very similar to Joe Cole. Was good with the ball at his feet, knew where to be. He knew where the back of the net was, and obviously went on to do a lot more with Liverpool. But I just feel that he's one of those players that when we talk about strikers, we talk about obviously Drogba, we talk about, Good Johnson, Chris Sutton and Zola and this other person and that person. We very rarely mention Daniel Sturridge, and that's maybe because he did go on loan. I think he went on loan to Bolton as well. So maybe that's why we don't. But when he played for Chelsea, he did put a shift in. And I just think he's one of those players. Imagine we kept him. Imagine we didn't sell him on. I think that about Salah. I think that about Kevin De Bruyne. But imagine we didn't. I mean, I think we got to see a bit more with Daniel Sturridge, didn't we? So we got to see what he can potentially do at this club. And he never really held down a spot. And I'm thinking at the time, Drogba would have been ahead of him at that point anyway, in terms of, first choice. But he for me, he was just a brilliant goal scorer and still is. And another one, again, with that football brain. As much as he annoys me on Sky Sports when he's on there, just because of what he talks, but I can tell that he's got a football brain, if that makes sense. But his execution of what he's trying to tell us is probably a bit off sometimes. But he's definitely someone that's got a football brain, knows what he's talking about, and a brilliant goal scorer. And I think if we, again, kept someone like him in the team, we probably would have won a lot more. I really do think that. And I think he's really underrated for what he did at his time at Chelsea. Could have scored a lot more goals, 100%, but on his day, he was unplayable.
Yeah, good player. That's a really good shout. And I'm remembering when Villas-Boas did come in, he was slowly phasing out those more senior players. Like I mentioned, the Anelkas, the Alexes, and even Frank Lampard and John Terry found themselves on the bench at times. Daniel Sturridge was the one player that stepped up in that lineup and was contributing with goals, assists, and probably was one of Villas-Boas' starting players and main guys. I think that was a season in 2011, 2012 where he probably got double figures. And he did go to Liverpool and he did really well at Liverpool. Remember in his first couple of seasons, particularly when they almost won the league in 2000.
I mean, he did have Suarez next to him as well, but
he did, he did. But no, like very underrated. Actually, a player that I wouldn't have considered, but now that you've said it, it's a really good shout.
I think you've got one more. Have you got one more? Oh no, you've done Cudicini.
No, I've done my three.
Have you got honourable shout-outs? Any honourable shout-outs?
Yeah, I mean, all the ones you mentioned, the Ramirez, Mikel, Giroud, even Ivanovic.
I was just about to say Ivanovic as well. Yeah. We haven't mentioned him. But
very underrated.
He's got to be in there, surely, as well. Dan Petrescu, for anyone a bit older as well. Dan Petrescu's got to be in there.
And even the likes of Good Johnson, Damien Duff.
Yeah, Hasselbank.
Absolutely fantastic. Hasselbank, happy birthday to him, by the way.
Yeah, it's his birthday today.
Carvalho as well. I mentioned his name earlier in the podcast, but what a player at centre-back and that partnership he formed with John Terry.
Yeah.
I want to say that the kind of current generation of Chelsea players is more rated or kind of at a more fair level. But back in the day, now that maybe these players have retired or they've moved on, you actually realise how good they were and maybe what we missed out on by selling them or kind of seen him moved on. But yeah, honourable shout outs to all those guys I mentioned.
Did we mention Iron Robin? We just mentioned him.
I don't think we did. We didn't, did we?
He's got to be in there because he was electrifying. He was one of those players that I was gutted when we sold him. Actually, I was gutted when he left Chelsea, but Iron Robin's got to be in there for me as well as an honourable shout out because he's just. He could again walk in. I'm sure he could walk into a team today and still play now. Definitely.
Pedro as well, perhaps.
Pedro, yeah, he's still playing, isn't he? I didn't realise he's still playing.
He's still at Lazio.
I was watching Lazio.
When he's in the Champions League.
I was like, Lazio, Pedro. I was like, I can't believe he's still. I thought he was like 37 when he was at Chelsea.
Yeah, not just his time at Chelsea, but his career as a whole. World Cup winner, Champions League winner, Premier League winner, Europa League winner, Club World Cup winner, Super Cup winner. He's won pretty much every trophy there is to win.
Yeah. And he's still playing as well.
And I remember even in his last season at Chelsea, even though he probably didn't have the same ability, but he was running lengths of the pitch up and down. And his performance in the Europa League final was absolutely fantastic as well against Arsenal in Baku. So we have him to thank for that as well. Probably underrated, I'd say.
I don't know what I'm more shocked at, the fact that Pedro's younger than me or that he's still playing football. I always thought he was older than me. I really did. He's 36 years of age. So, but he's still doing well. You know, he's doing well. Been at Lazio since 2021. But yeah, he had some really good spells. You know, he's had really good, very short in terms of moving clubs. Obviously, Barca, Chelsea, Roma, Lazio. But he's doing really well. So yeah, definitely an underrated, honourable shout out to Pedro as well. I think that's well deserved there for Pedro. But let's move to Saturday, 3 p.m. We're back at Stamford Bridge. We are inviting Burnley, Vincent Kompany's Burnley to. Is he still there, Vincent Kompany? Has he been sacked, Chelsea? He's still there. He's on the brink of being sacked. I think if he loses another 2 or 3 games. But what's your thoughts going into this game where we kind of need to make sure that we don't drop the momentum that we kind of had just before that international break, and we can kind of pick up where we left off almost and hopefully pick up 3 points?
Yeah, I mean, before that international break, we were conceding goals in a sloppy manner against Leicester and against Newcastle in those 2 fixtures we had right before the break. But we were also scoring 7 goals in 2 games, which is something we haven't really seen enough of in Chelsea in recent years. So we can keep up that scoring record against the Burnley, who don't have the best defensive record at all in the Premier League. I think we'll win this comfortably and get 3 points. Obviously, anything can happen against the international break. Yeah, I hate the statistic, but it's always this time of the year where we have, around Easter weekend, where we have that big blip. We had it against Brentford, where we lost 4-1 at home. We had it against West Brom, where we lost 5-2 at home the previous year. I'm trying to remember who we lost to last year, this time of the year. I think it was Wolves. We might have lost away to Wolves at Molineux, I think. So it's always this time of the year after the international break and during an Easter weekend where we have a bit of a drop in form and a bit of a shock result. But that being said, we've got to beat Burnley at home. They're almost destined for relegation. And also we have to remember that Batro Fofana, who's been their best player, I'd say, since January, can't play against his parent club. Yeah. So he won't be able to feature against us, which is probably good for us because he's a good player. And we'll see what we're going to do with him in the summer. But yeah, I'm confident. I'm just hoping that Poch picks the right line. And with no injuries, particularly Cole Palmer, Malagusto and Chukwuemeka, who look very good against Leicester. So yeah, 3 points is a must on Saturday, 3 p.m.
Yeah, I think we go into that game with confidence. I think we have to believe that we can beat them off the back of the way we were playing. Like you said, 7 goals in 2 games is something that we were crying out for this time last season. We were creating so many chances and just not tucking the ball into the back of the net and scoring the goals. But we seem to be doing that. We just need to address the defensive side of things now and shut that shop up and just, defensively be a bit more switched on. There was something I think I asked you probably last week or this week around Thiago Silva, who hasn't, I don't think, featured for some time now in terms of starting it for Chelsea. It feels like a physical game will be apparent against Burnley. I think they'll be, they're a physical team anyway. They like to get in and amongst the mixture of chaos, set pieces especially as well. Is this a game where you'd probably bring back Thiago Silva into a game, a bit more experience off the back of an international break where I don't think he would have travelled, or gone with the Brazilian squad. So this is a game where you probably bring him in fresh to try and just shut that up, and in terms of defensively, and be a bit more tight knit at the back, as they say.
It's a shout, yeah. And like I always say with Silva, his experience and his leadership is needed. I think you sent me a message, but he kind of double checking this with me, but he hasn't featured since the 12th of February against Crystal Palace. And whether that's linked to what his wife's been posting on Twitter, or his relationship currently with Pochettino, or what the fact that he won't be at Chelsea next season. But I still think his leadership is so valuable to the club. He stayed behind, he hasn't travelled. But Chalobah and Disasi, I believe, also weren't picked. So they would have trained at Cobham as well, and hopefully they'll be fresh for the game against Burnley. So it could be any of those two of the three of the centre-backs. Preferably, I always want to see Silva play. I think he's a fantastic player. But I think given what we saw previously to the international break, I think Pochettino will opt for Chalobah and Disasi again.
Yeah, I think it's a sad way for Thiago Silva to go out, especially what he's done in a short space of time at Chelsea. But I do feel that his phasing out of the club time is happening now, and I think we just probably will see very few and far between appearances from him from now to the end of the season. Just looking at the league table, I think we're 11th at the moment. We're on 27 games. A lot of I think that would probably be down to the League Cup final, probably, one of those domestic cups where we've played one game less than a lot of the teams around us. But if we go on to win against Burnley, we could potentially see ourselves in that conversation for, Europa League Conference, or even, Europa League, if we can start picking up a few more wins and results go our way. It's a massive game. I know I say it nearly every week when we talk about this, but this is a really big game, and it's a game that we should be winning. But surely this could be the turning point, more so for Pochettino, getting the team to believe and understand what he's trying to do with this squad. And if we get those 3 points and we end up in a 7th or 8th position come Sunday, Monday, you look at the remainder of those fixtures that we've got coming up from now until the end of the season, there's some winnable games in there. So we could actually, as cliche as it sounds, kickstart our season with a win against Burnley.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some tricky games coming up. I think the two games we have in hand are against Spurs at home and Arsenal away. There's also a trip to Old Trafford that we've still got. But we've also got some fairly easy games. I mean, nothing's easy in the Premier League, but we've got Burnley, Sheffield, Everton, Bournemouth still to come. So yeah, it could really be a turning point, not just for Chelsea, but also for Pochettino. If we remember, I think it was this 1st or 2nd of April where Potter got sacked. So almost this time last year. And maybe that was telling that what the managers were, what the owners were planning for the upcoming season. So they could also start to be planning for next season from now. And if Pochettino doesn't get the results on the pitch now, it could also spell the end of his time at Chelsea. So could be massively important for Pochettino and his future at the club. But it will start with that game against Burnley, 3 p.m. And like I said, for me, it's got to be 3 points given the form of the two clubs.
Yeah, just a good point you raise, actually, just in terms of possibly Pochettino losing to Burnley. I think the following game after that will be Manchester United on the 4th of April. I mean, if you lose those two games and come away with, 0 points out of 6, we could be talking about Pochettino potentially being sacked, and it's not even worth thinking about, to be honest. I don't want to press restart on this project again. But he has to deliver the results on the pitch, and I think he has to get the team right, doesn't he, on Saturday?
Definitely. I also just remember I said we have to go to Old Trafford. United's at home, isn't it?
Yeah, it's at home, 4th of April. But let's talk about our lineups. Let's talk about who you would go with in terms of goalkeeper to your attackers. And there's obviously a question. I think Sanchez would have played the FA Cup, I think, didn't he, against Leicester? Would you stick, I think you've asked me this question, but would you stick with Sanchez knowing that he's not good with his feet, switches off from time to time? Surely it's got to be a Petrovic back in goal, who seems to have been playing really well.
Yeah, I think he even made an appearance for Serbia. I'd go back to Petrovic for the game against Burnley. Also Sanchez, I would say he played a part in the own goal that Disasi scored.
Yeah.
He was a bit too far out of his penalty box. So yeah, it's got to be Petrovic. I'll run through this quickly because my laptop's actually about to die. I'll go for Malagusto at right back if he's fit and he's being able to recover from his cold. Centre backs, I'll go with Chalobah and Disasi. I think that's what Poch will go for. Left back, I think it'll be Cucurella again. Oh, hang on, Chilwell's back, isn't he? I think. Sorry, I'll go with Chilwell actually. Midfielders, Enzo, Caicedo, and Gallagher.
Yeah,
Palmer, Mudryk, and Jackson.
Yeah, I'd go with the same. I'd go with exactly the same lineup, I think, as you've done. Be interesting to see. Obviously, Sterling didn't play internationally this week or last week, so be interesting to see if Sterling makes an appearance. And obviously, a lot of controversy around him being booed off the pitch against Leicester. It'd be interesting to see if Pochettino puts him straight back into the team. But before we wrap up very, very quickly, score prediction.
3-0 Chelsea.
I like it. I think I'm going to go for a modest 2-0. I think 2-0 will be, or 3-0. I'll take either. But I mean, we're both going for a clean sheet, so we've got to be defensively switched on for that. But we'll have to see. Let us know your thoughts in the comments as well. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and make sure you go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Make sure you hit the notification bells on there and give us your thoughts also in the comment section on Spotify as well. Theo, as always, pleasure. Enjoy the weekend when you get to it, the long weekend, thankfully, that we've got coming up. And everyone else, enjoy your Easter break. We'll be back next week, hopefully with another episode. Until then, enjoy, and let's hope for 3 points on Saturday against Burnley. Thank you very much for listening.